This is Host Jockeys Unite, the only episodic podcast that strives to not only educate and entertain those in emergency services, but to give an inside peek inside the fire and EMS services to the general public. We are here to leave a legacy for future generations. And now, here are your hosts, Chris Edwards and Jay Gallagher. Hello, welcome to the premiere episode of Host Jockeys Unite. I'm your host, Chris Edwards, and this is my co-host, Captain Jay Gallagher.
Yo, what's up?
Not too much. And in this edition, we're going to be discussing a topic that is more entertaining than educational. The portrayal of the fire service by Hollywood in today's most popular fire dramas. We're going to discuss what these shows do well, what they don't do so well, what we like about the show, and what we dislike about the show. We will talk about what is real and just how much creative license the production staff took in the name of entertainment and drama. So settle in, relax, and enjoy the show. I'm Chris Edwards, and I'm the host of the podcast, and I'm going to give you a little information about myself and Jay Gallagher. I began my fire career about 6 years ago as a volunteer firefighter and took all my certifications that were required, all my classes. I then moved into a career firefighter position about 6 months ago to a year ago, where I obtained my EMT certification. Jay, when did you begin your fire service?
Counting my Explorer time, it started in 1986, and I retired in 2015, so that's 29 years. I've had a long and rewarding career.
And what positions have you held throughout your career in the fire service, and explain these positions?
I did everything from basic grunt firefighter, for the driver operator, lieutenant, captain. The only positions I have not held is any assistant chief or chief's positions, with the exception of I was chief for about a year and a half of a kind of a cert based emergency response group.
Yeah, you're talking about REACT. That's where we actually met each other.
Exactly. And it's hard to believe it's been this long.
Been at least 10 years, yeah.
Yep.
And so you retired as a captain from the fire service.
That is correct.
Okay, so what is the most funny thing that has ever happened to you during your time in the fire service, be it either on a call or just in general when on duty?
It has to be, there's been a bunch of funny things that's happened, but it has to be hands down, when Hurricane Isabel come through. We were there at the station, and the Weather Channel had come down, and they were doing their live coverage of the storm, and they had set up in our back parking lot. Well, Jim Cantore was there, and we all know that when Jim Cantore shows up, it's time to leave town. Evidently, the Weather Channel really hates him because they send him where the crap happens. Now, Jim's a really nice guy. Hands down, really, really super cool dude. But he also likes to play pranks, and we all know that you do not start a prank war with a bored firefighter. So he pranked us a couple times during the day, and we all, decided we'd get even with him. And when he started doing his live broadcast to the nation, I guess, 15 firefighters lined up at the back doors of the apparatus bay, turned around and mooned him while he was broadcasting, which put a very quick end to said live broadcast.
Wow.
And I would tell you what he said to us, but I'm not sure how the age of some of the listeners we have, so I'll just say it was very, very colorful.
Very explicit. So I guess my most memorable story from the fire service so far, and the funniest thing that's ever happened to me, was when I was on my volunteer department. We got a call for a rescue. Well, we get on the scene, and there's this little old 80-year-old man in the bathroom, sitting on one of those potty seat things that older people sit on. Well, this poor guy had his man bits stuck in the slats on the potty seat. And every time he stood up, he was like, ow! Ow! So here we are with screwdrivers and hand tools trying to take this potty seat apart to extricate this guy's man bits from said potty seat, trying not to laugh the whole time.
Sometimes it is hard to hold a straight face in this career.
It really is. I've come across some crazy things and some funny things, but that's the most memorable thing that I've ever seen. So our next segment that we're going to get into is our segment called Ask the Firefighter. This segment is called Ask the Firefighter. During the segment, we take questions from our listeners and answer them during the show. Today's question is this. Most larger fire departments have a research and development division. If your department assigned you to this division, what would you invent to make your task easier for your crews? Jay?
Well, it's not necessarily something that I would invent, but something that I would change.
Okay.
And that would be the computerized pump panels on all the trucks. Now, before I get off on this tangent, don't think that I'm Barney Rubble, Fred Flintstone firefighter that don't think outside of the box, because I do. But with talking with some of the guys on the departments here, here locally, the computers on the trucks have no emergency backup. They have no throttles. So if your crew goes in and something happens to that computer and shuts down your engine, then your crew's cooking. Now, granted, we have, compared to when I started, we have superb equipment, without a shadow of a doubt. But to me, that is something that really needs to be addressed and changed. If nothing else, just putting a little toggle switch on beside the computer and putting a throttle there, to where if something happens to that computer, you can flip that switch and go to your manual throttle, and that way you're not cooking your crew, and everyone goes home.
Exactly. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, and yeah, because I was going to say, at my career station, our tanker has a manual throttle and it pumps like a champ. However, the inside of the tanker has a computer screen that tells like the water levels and all the controls and all that, and currently doesn't work, but it is still a manual throttle. Our engines, on the other hand, are Pierce, and they have what I call semi-computer controlled. It's got presets that you can hit where it'll set your pressures for you and set your RPMs for you, but yet you still have the option to manually control it if you need to.
It's just to me that is a safety issue that, even though to my knowledge it has not happened yet, but we all know that in the fire service everything can go from everything's okay to holy crap in a matter of seconds. And it's kind of like LA's new all electric engine.
Oh Lord. Yes.
It's whoop-de-doo. Instead of hearing that big Detroit coming down the road, or just like you expect to hear the little spaceship from the Jetsons go by.
Sorry, man, we can't. Go ahead.
Yeah, like you were getting ready to say. Sorry, man, we can't help you. We're charging our truck.
Exactly.
But they've already had problems with that truck, and water and I've always been taught water and electricity don't mix. So I mean, that's a disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah. I mean, look at all the money that Alamance County spent on their heavy rescue, electric heavy rescue, the county where you live.
Mm-hmm.
And
A multi-million dollar piece of apparatus right there.
right, I mean, and you and I both have seen the fully computerized systems. They're nice, easy to operate. We went and saw one when we went to the Fallen Firefighters Memorial a couple years ago in Gettysburg.
Yeah, shout out to Vigilant Hose Company in Emmitsburg for being so kind to us that night we were there. They were awesome.
They're very accommodating. So that's today's question. And if you have a question about the fire EMS service that you would like answered on the show, please email us at firefighter274@outlook.com. In today's show, we're going to discuss the portrayal of the fire and EMS service in Hollywood TV shows. The first show beginning today is going to be Chicago Fire. Chicago Fire ran from 2011 to the current season. It's part of the One Chicago series of TV dramas. Chicago Fire is filmed on location in Chicago with exterior shots at working fire stations, and interior scenes are filmed on a soundstage. Jay, what's your general opinion on the show?
Uh, I'll give it 4 Halligans out of 5.
4 Halligans out of 5. Um,
Yeah.
in my opinion, the level of realism is reasonably accurate. Well, how about you?
Well, we all know that when you're crawling down the hallway of a burning house, you can't hardly see crap. You're lucky if you see a foot in front of your face, and they don't show it like that. But as far as what they do on the fire scenes, as far as how they advance the hose, how they put actually suppress the fire. Uh, the technical advisors on that one are on their A game on that.
Right. I think that a lot of it has to do with what you were saying before. It has to do with the fact that these actors want their face shown on the screen, so they wear special made SCBA masks that are 360 degrees, so they can be seen on camera, as well
Mm-hmm.
as they don't smoke it up. I think it has to do with like a contractual thing as far as that goes.
Yeah. Um, the only thing, if I had to down it for any reason, shape, form, or fashion, is the fact that they seem to think it's okay to sneak off to the turnout gear locker area and do the nasty.
Right.
I mean, the firehouse is a place of work, and you don't do things like that at your place of work.
Right. You don't do it in the turnout locker room, and you don't do it on the hose bed on the truck.
No, and you don't do it sitting on the washing machine. Uh,
Right.
Even though it hit a good spin cycle, it takes a lot of the work out of it for you, but still.
uh,
Um,
oh, go ahead.
One thing I do like is, and it probably hits home with um, every firefighter out there that's ever had been on a bad incident. Um, when, all right, let's take for instance when Shay died. Okay,
Yeah.
the way they portrayed Severide going through the PTSD of that was good. It to me it showed everybody that hey, we have feelings, we have emotions. Things like this really does happen.
Right. The was it first or second season when he was hooked on the pills?
I believe it was second
Second
season.
season, yeah. So that I guess is what you would call what you say was good about the show. What I would think would be good is what I think they do right is like I said before, most of the emergency scenes are relatively accurate and true to life as
Mm-hmm.
far as the actual on scenes. Um, my opinion, what's bad about the show or what they could do differently is lately in the past couple of seasons, they've begun to focus more and more on the drama and love lives of a crew of 51 and have shown less and less emergency response scenes.
Absolutely, absolutely. That was one of the things that got me hooked on it from right from the start. It was 4 or 5 runs of a show, and it was really good. But you know, the more and more, you know, a little bit here, a little bit there, they migrated towards a love story. But in the past couple seasons, it's like, holy crap.
Yeah.
Everybody's doing everybody at 51 except for Mouch, and he's got Trudy, and who would want to do that? But anyway,
Yeah. Right. Um.
um,
So, in your opinion, what's the ugly about the show? What's the worst thing ever about the show? Where did they totally drop the ball?
probably when they were showing Severide being hooked on the pills.
Yeah.
Now I'm not saying that doesn't happen. It it houses across the country or around the world even. But to me, and the way I was brought up, I mean, you might as well say I've been in the fire service my entire life. My pop was fire. He was all made it all the way up to fire chief,
Yeah.
and you know I was brought up. You don't do things like that. If you're gonna go in to the convenience store and buy a 6 pack of beer, you don't have on a fire department T-shirt.
Exactly.
You don't do anything to disgrace the job.
Right. And that's actually in my volunteer department. That's still a big thing with them. They're like, don't go to the bar wearing a fire department hat or T-shirt or anything like that.
Exactly, exactly. Um, it's just an unwritten rule, and we're talking about a job that when you go out the door and kiss your wife goodbye, it might literally be the last
That's good.
time you know,
Yeah.
and to disgrace the people who've you know pat died in the line of duty by doing something like that is just you know it's bad.
Right.
And the way they showed Kelly being addicted to the pills, I think they could have done without that.
They could have, but unfortunately, it's a fact of life in the business,
Now,
and that could be a whole nother show. This topic could be a whole nother show. I read an article the other day. I think it was on Firehouse magazine where there was a lady talking about medical marijuana use in the fire service for things like PTSD and pain, and how there's a stigma that needed to be overcome. And this is kind of getting off topic, but how there was a stigma that needed to be overcome where you have all these firefighters that are addicted to pain medications because of injuries and this and that and the other, opioids and whatnot, but yet it's such a bad thing for people to be, you know, using medical marijuana for
yeah.
for the same thing, which is not addictive at all. But that's a topic for another day.
So,
So our next show that we're going to discuss is Station 19. And when Station 19 first came out, I actually liked it. It was a good show and it had a lot of potential. It ran from 2018 and it's still in its current production. Station 19 is a spinoff from the wildly popular medical drama Grey's Anatomy, and it follows the first responders of Seattle Fire Department Station 19. Jay, what are your general opinions on the show?
the only thing, in my opinion, believable about that show is firefighters' ride to the incidents on a fire truck.
Right, I was going to say, as far as my level of realism, it's very low. It's more about that show now is more about interpersonal relationships and love interest than actual emergency response.
Now, I mean, which shows like that are fine, But if you're going to have a show based on the fire department, let's have it based, on fire department and what goes on, not who's doing who at what house,
All
you
right.
know.
Uh,
And
yeah.
that the what's her name, Herrera?
Herrera, yeah. Andy.
Yeah, I mean, she department whole.
Right.
That's I mean, no, and I mean, that to me that show is, you know, take it off the air.
Right. And I'll be honest with you, it's kind of my guilty pleasure. I still watch it, but strictly for entertainment purposes only.
Yeah, which that show is definitely entertainment purposes only. I mean, I guess you could rate Station 19 right there with Young and the Restless.
Right, exactly.
So
So, what is good about the show, in your opinion, if anything?
they got nice fire trucks.
Yeah, I was going to say the equipment is true to life.
Yeah, the equipment is true to life, and they actually dress out true to life.
Right.
But the other officer at 19, the lieutenant, um, they show him with coming in with the 5 o'clock shadow, and correct me if I'm wrong, one of the guys has a goatee.
Yeah.
Uh, do you think that would surpass in any department today? No,
No,
sir.
not at all. Not per NFPA standards, anyway.
Mm-mm.
And that's where I was going to go with what's ugly about the show and where do they drop the ball.
Yeah.
The show lacks any level of technical advice whatsoever. And you hit it on the head. I said the male actors in the show always wore a full beard on camera, even while in full turnouts and SCBA. And every firefighter knows that full beards are not allowed for safety reasons. And that's the
Yeah.
one fact that really irritates me about the show.
Now it's kind of funny in a way. This is a little bit swaying a little bit off topic, but it's still part of it. There was a firefighter on the volunteer department down on the coast that I knew. He's passed away now. But he had a full beard, and I mean he had a thick full beard, and like almost on the Santa Claus type full beard, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
And he had no trouble whatsoever getting a good seal on his mask. Never had a trouble with it. But we all know that if something happened to him on a scene and it was ruled some kind of respiratory, it was going to be blamed because of that beard.
Right.
But
And his family wouldn't collect the insurance money or any
it,
benefits.
and like I said, as God is my witness, this man had the thickest beard I've ever seen in my life. But every time he put that mask on and checked for a seal, no issues whatsoever. Which amazed me because I could have like 2 hairs growing on my chin and wouldn't be able to get a seal.
Right. And in retrospect to that, the 2 or 3 years ago there was a firefighter that was killed in line of duty for that same reason. He had a beard and wore a mask into a fire and it failed and he died. And it was I think Pineville Fire Department
Huh?
in North Carolina. And the one of the other things that really bugged me about Station 19, which what I put under the bad about the show category, was most of the plot lines for season 4 and 5 were specifically geared towards COVID-19 and the pandemic.
Yeah.
And the show at that point turned very political. And I don't want to get into that, but if you've watched it, you know what the politics of it were.
Yeah.
I personally watch TV to escape the real world for a little while, and I don't want to be
Mm.
reminded of what's happening in the real world in plot lines of a fictional TV show that I watch. And
Well,
sitting there during the middle of a pandemic and then watching a TV show about the pandemic basically was like, no.
yeah. Well, kind of like backing up to Chicago fire.
Yeah.
During the pandemic, you seen them taking the appropriate BSI precautions because of it, but they didn't ram it down your throat like Station 19 did.
Yeah. It just turned very political for those 2 seasons. And honestly, the last few episodes have gotten fairly good again, as far as production quality and things like that. But it's still rated at the bottom of my list of shows.
Now,
So my next show that I actually like, and the reason I like it is for the entertainment value of it, because to me it's very entertaining, is 911. And then, of course, that has the spinoff 911 Lone Star. 911 was Fox Network's offering into the fire and rescue TV drama series. It ran from 2018, and it's still currently in production. And 911 follows the adventures and the exploits of Los Angeles Fire Department Station 118. Joe, what is your general opinion on the show?
I like it for entertainment purposes. I like Lone Star better than I do the original 911. Maybe it's because Lone Star wears um, the like the Carnes 1010 wannabe leather helmets, and the original 911 wears like what I call the salad bowls.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes Lone Star look more like a firefighter, traditional firefighter. But I've always been a fan of Rob Lowe, and I guess that kind of pulls me more that way. But some of the things that they do as far as on scene stuff, we all know is, well, let me back that up. Us as firefighters know is BS.
Right.
But someone who didn't know, everyday Joe Blow, citizen on the street might think, well, hey, that's how they done it on, that's how they really do it, which is not.
Right.
I mean, and you know, God forbid somebody come up on an accident scene or something like that. Oh, I seen them do this on TV, so it must be real, and do something and further injure the patient, or even kill them. But
Right.
that's kind of, I guess, why um, when it comes to something like this, I wish they would get a little bit more technical advice. Some shows a whole lot more technical advice, and just for that purpose. I mean, I might be 100 miles off base with it, but that's the way I feel. But entertainment value, I'll give it 3 out of 5 Halligans.
Yeah. That was my general opinion. Basically, I put for my general opinion on the show. It's one of my favorite fire dramas because of its entertainment value. Every episode is very entertaining, and the stories take you out of the real world for an hour at a time. Um, and it's actually produced very well. The production and the camera work on that show is actually really well done, in my opinion. And then, as far as level of realism, I rated it minimal realism. And to give you an example, in the most recent episode, there was a medical scene where, in a beauty salon, a person's face was covered by hot wax, and it was hardened, and the patient had no way to breathe. The patient was alert and awake. And then, after making a hole in the wax, the medic inserted an oropharyngeal airway. Every basic EMT knows that an OPA cannot be used in a patient that is awake and has a gag reflex. The patient would not be able to tolerate the adjunct.
Mm-mm.
So that's where I call BS on that, as far
Yeah.
as the medical side of it.
But just between us, anything with Jennifer Love Hewitt in it, I'm in.
Right. And that's what I put down as good about the show. I said what they do well, or they do right compared to real life, is unlike the other shows. This show actually shows the dispatch side of the emergency services. This
Now,
The dispatch scenes seem to be very accurate. However, I've never been a dispatcher, so I can't really attest to how accurate they are. But they seem to be accurate to me, and they actually show the dispatch side of it, whereas the other shows don't.
now, now, whether I don't know if they can, you know, tap into some, to a street cam and look about and tell incoming units what they see or whatnot. That might just be uh, television fantasy. I don't know, but I like you. I've never been in on the dispatch side. We took a tour of the dispatch center one time, but that was about it.
Yeah, we did
Uh,
actually.
and they wouldn't let us push no buttons or anything like that. Which
I know, how rude.
I'm telling you, man, you're gonna invite somebody into a party. I mean, let us push a button. Jeez, what's the worst that can happen?
Self-destruct in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah. Game over.
So when I put down what's bad about the show, is I just basically to re-elaborate, the producers could spend a lot of time with a technical advisor and work on the realism of the show.
Exactly.
So, and then our fourth show, which is actually a newcomer to the Fire TV lineup, is CBS's network, or it's going to be CBS Network's offering into the world of firefighting, and that's Fire Country. It started this year, 2022, and it's still current. And Fire Country focuses on the story of a convict who was released from prison into the custody of a Cal Fire wildland firefighting prison camp. And Jay, so far, what's your general opinions on the show?
I love it.
I do too. It's the new contender in the firefighting television arena that shows a lot of potential. Episode writing is on par, and the cast is really good at their roles. I'm really a big fan of Billy Burke, who plays Chief Vince Leone in the show, and Max Thoreau of the SEAL Team series plays his son, who's the inmate firefighter Bodie Donovan. What do you
Yeah.
think? What do you think is the level of realism?
Well, when we were living at the coast, we had a lot of marshland, and that would catch fire at least once a year, and we'd have a big marsh fire. And I got to work with uh, the wildfire, through North Carolina Forestry Service,
Yeah,
and everything that I've seen so far has been spot on. Um, and the only difference with Cal Fire versus what I've seen is Cal Fire has the bigger engines, and the forestry has uh, four-wheel drive pickup trucks with skid units on the back.
right,
But other than that, everything that I've seen so far has been spot on.
right. And Fire Country is a TV drama, so yes, there is a little bit of a love life, you know, thing going on there, but it's not like big and center stage like the rest of the show. Um,
Exactly. And one thing I like about um, Fire Country and Chicago Fire, the terminology that they use is actual terminology that is used in the fire service.
that we use, right?
Exactly. Like the other night when I was watching Fire Country, they were talking about pinching off the head of the fire,
Yeah,
and for those who aren't firefighters and don't know what that means is the a forest fire or wildland fire will have a head on it, which is the most protruding part of the fire. Is usually the absolute hottest part of the fire, and the way you pinch it off is literally what it says. You cut into the fire line, go out a little bit, cut back into it, and literally pinch it off.
right.
And you know, it's spot on. I mean, you know, whoever is the technical advisor for Fire Country, I give major props to.
Right. And what I think is good
And you
about
know,
oh, go ahead.
and
Sorry.
you know, Billy Burke also played one of the fire chiefs on 911 Lone Star for a while.
Yeah, he was the bad guy.
Yeah,
But yeah, I do really like Billy Burke as an actor. I've watched him in several different shows from way back, and I really like him as an actor. But as far as Fire Country goes, what I like about the show, and I think what they've done right as compared to real life, is I like that even though the show is centered around wildland firefighting, the show also does feature some structural and wildland urban interface firefighting techniques as well.
exactly. Like the episode where um, I think it was episode before last, where the
Community center, wasn't it?
community center, gymnasium, or something
Yeah.
caught fire. And it went well. This last episode, when they had to fire around that farm and the barn caught fire.
Yeah,
So
and I've actually done some barn fires, and hay fires, and that's actually was very realistic.
now, and the sugar cubes with the horse, that works.
Yeah, I
So
do like the troubled relationship between Bodie and Vince, and how they're kind of getting to work through that.
you know that gives it a good sideline, I guess you would call it. And excuse me. And the the whole deal there with the daughter and Jake breaking her heart the night that she got killed.
Yeah,
You know, and I could understand why Bodie's upset with Jake, and the writing of it is very good. I mean, it gives you the fire department, the fire end of it as a plot, and then it gives you that little bit of a sideline as a plot. But most of it is focused on what? The firefighting.
right. And it even shows where Gabriella, who's the captain's daughter, is in the fire academy and going through the fire academy for Cal Fire, and that adds a little bit element of drama to it because the captain doesn't want his daughter in firefighting.
Now,
But one thing they never explain, or maybe they will later on, but um, Bodie's last name is Donovan, but Vince, the chief, his last name is Leone or Leone, and why would they have a different last name?
you caught on to that too, huh?
Yeah, so maybe they'll explain that later on in future episodes.
Now,
And then for the categories of bad about the show or ugly about the show, so far I can't see anything. It's just too early to tell.
yeah, like I said, everything's been spot on. I'm I'm enjoying it. I can't think of anything that would bad as of now. So
All right.
I'm right there with you on that.
And that brings us to our fifth show, the greatest
Dun,
show ever.
dun, 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 dun.
Yep, Emergency. Emergency ran from 1972 to 1979. Season 7 was actually a series of made for TV movies, and it spun off a Saturday morning cartoon, Emergency Plus 4, which,
I found those on YouTube today, believe it or not.
yeah, and you could tell they were old because the film and all was all red. I looked at a couple of those. But um, Emergency Plus 4 actually featured Roy DeSoto and um, Johnny Gage, and then four, I guess you would call them explorers that would drive around in an ambulance with a monkey. But it
Yeah.
was kind of like the GI Joe, whereas in the end of each episode they had like a little learning moment. It's like the more you know, kind of
Yeah.
thing, or knowing is half the battle kind of thing. So it
Hmm.
always taught like a little lesson at the end of the show for the kids. Um, Emergency was and probably is still the most popular emergency services TV show ever.
Absolutely.
Um, so
Did you did you know that when the before the emergency started running, the average response time for a paramedic unit was 45 minutes. At the end of the run, the average response time was 10 minutes.
Yeah, and that show came out literally when the paramedic program was just becoming a thing in the United States.
It was still in its infancy.
Yeah, it was. It was still. I mean, literally the first two episodes of Emergency discussed basically about how L.A. County Fire Department was putting their fire paramedic program together, and how Dr. Brackett was against it for the longest time.
Yep, right up till he saved Dixie, and then that kind of changed his mind on it.
So
But
we all know your general opinions of the show. It kind of matches mine, and it's probably the greatest show ever. As far as level of realism, I have to say it's the most realistic show, and EMS show ever on TV.
absolutely, Jack Webb, who was who done the show, he also done Adam 12 and Dragnet, if I'm not mistaken. He made Johnny and Roy, or Kevin Ty and Randolph Mantooth. Uh, he made them actually go through the paramedic program, and actually made them go through the LA's Fire Academy at that time, just so he could get that more realism
Right.
than say, I hate to slam on it, but Station 19 or what, they actually done it. And funny thing of here's a little funny story I read. Um, they were having the some kind of a big celebration there at the LA Fire Museum. Oh, it was when they bought the Mayfair Suburban Ambulance when they
Yeah.
restored it. Johnny and Roy were there
Right.
for that. Well, while they were getting everything set up and ready to go, there was a vehicle accident in front of the museum. Randolph Mantooth, Kevin Ty went and helped till the fire department got there. So tell me how cool it would be to be treated by Johnny and Roy.
Right. Exactly. And just to add to what you were saying, yeah, that was what I was going to actually say. Was that they were put through paramedic school, but they were never actually licensed, from what I understand about that. But they did go through the whole training just for the show, the whole course.
And Johnny still to this day does lectures and whatnot promoting the EMS and fire programs you know your in your localities, I guess you would say. A few years ago, Randolph Mantooth actually was in Raleigh at the Southeastern Fire Expo and Conference, and
Oh
me
man,
and my me and my oldest son got to meet him.
I would have loved to have been there.
Very nice fella.
Yeah.
Um, and I told him, I said, you're the which is no lie. At the time, my pop was had just gotten his EMT certification. He was already a firefighter, and he watched that show. That spurred him on to become a paramedic. And you know, watching Pop, and me wanting to, be like my Pop, it spurred me that way too,
Right.
to where I become, firefighter paramedic. But and I told him, how he influenced us, and that show influenced us, and instead of taking the praise and like you would think most Hollywood stars would, he was very very humble about it. He was more appreciative of us being firefighter paramedics than the fact that we were praising him for spurring us in that direction.
Right. And that show actually, it's pretty much a proven fact. That show actually encouraged and basically spawned a whole generation or thousands and thousands of people to become firefighters and paramedics
Absolutely,
because of it.
absolutely. But both of my sons, we got the whole DVD collection of Emergency.
Yeah, you stole mine.
Only one DVD, and they'll sit there and watch it, you know, on a daily basis, and
Cozy.
uh, it's on Cozy TV, and it don't matter if they just watched that episode 15 minutes ago. When it comes time for it to come on Cozy, they'll sit down and watch it, whether they watched it 15 minutes ago, 15 hours ago, or 2 years ago. They'll still watch it, and they love it, and it it gets them thinking, and they'll come to me and ask me, Dad, what's D5W? What's lactated ringers? And I'll tell them, and they'll hang on to that knowledge.
Well,
And
yeah, I was going to say, speaking of that, we actually carry lactating ringers on our ambulance at work, so that's something that's still around from back in the day.
hmm and I mean, it's you know not only like just like you said, it's still encouraging today's generation. For our next set group of firefighters and paramedics, which in my opinion is great. We're looking at a show that you know almost 50 years old.
Actually,
It
the
is 50 years
yeah,
old.
the 50-year anniversary's this year. Actually, I saw an
Yeah,
article on MeTV about it.
and you know it's just amazing. That how it's still inspiring kids to get in this line of work, and it as my pop used to say, it does the old heart good.
Yeah, and it amazes me how a show that is as dated as it is still is so entertaining, but yet realistic.
hmm
Um, to backtrack a little bit, talking about the actors, the main actors carrying or taking the paramedic classes for the realism, and you're gonna have to answer this one because I don't remember. But there's also two of the 51 crew that were firefighters in real life as well.
Actually, it was three.
Three, yeah, Captain Stanley and
No,
no,
Captain Hammer, who was um, the first captain of 51. Then it was Mike Stoker,
right,
and because the deal was that with Jack Webb was with the fire department was we'll let you have this apparatus, but one of our guys is going to drive it.
right.
So, and the there was I can't remember his name, but there's a third one.
It was the
I
Marco.
had I had actually I thought it was Marco, but it wasn't.
Oh, okay.
After doing some research, um, if I think of his name, I'll mention it on the next show. But right now I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah, and then of course they throw Chet Kelly in there for comic relief.
Oh God, yes.
um, but much like Chicago Fire, Emergency was filmed on location at working firehouses. At least the
hmm
exterior shots were working working firehouses. I know that on Chicago Fire the interior scenes were all on a soundstage, but I'm not sure about Emergency.
Now I can the episodes where like for instance the kitchen, the day room, the bunk room, that was all soundstage, and they even had a bay on the soundstage, apparatus bay.
Okay.
Now here's how to tell the difference when they're shooting at the soundstage versus the actual station. If the back door of the station was up, they were at the firehouse. If it was down, they were on the soundstage.
Soundstage. And a lot of things people was kind of a question I actually researched because I didn't know it at first, but earlier on in the series, you'd always hear them look at the map and then get on the radio and go like KMG 365. I didn't know what that was till I researched it. It was actually back in the day, the FCC actually required fire departments to have a call sign.
Yep.
And KMG 365 was their call sign for the station.
Believe it or not, I could remember the call sign or the call letters for the first department my dad was on when he was volunteer. KQZ 9012.
Yeah.
And how I can remember that, and I can't even half the time remember my dog's name. So.
Now, go ahead.
Now, what I think is kind of cool is how Chicago Fire gives little nods every now and then to emergency.
Right.
Their engine number 51, house number 51.
Because that's not the real Chicago Fire.
Exactly. The alarm when it goes off, it kind of has the same same tone.
Tones,
and yeah. There's the old Claxton alarm at on emergency,
which is my active 911 alarm, believe it or not.
And before Casey left, I think it was like him and Brett's first date. They were playing a game, and I think it was like, I think they were playing charades, if I'm not mistaken. But his was the TV show Emergency.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember that or not.
I do remember that episode.
But there are definite nods to that show in Chicago
and references, yeah.
Yeah. Which I think is really cool because it's kind of like paying respect to the, to the past.
Yeah.
Which to me is, very cool.
Now, in Emergency, I did find one flaw. There was an episode where, actually 2 episodes. One where Gage was upset because he kept missing Adam 12. So, in that episode, they referenced it as Adam 12 being a TV show. Then, in another episode, I think it was later on, they actually was more or less like a crossover where they were with the police officers from Adam 12 in real life. So, it was kind of like Adam 12 is existing in 2 different universes on the show.
Yeah, it was, they were in the pilot series. The first call that they had where they had to go pick up Dixie had a little car accident, and Pete and Malloy come up and ask them if they'd help them with traffic.
Yeah.
And, they had cameos in it through the whole, season run.
Yeah. Well, Emergency is actually a spinoff of Adam 12.
Mm-hmm.
It was their fire department side of it. And then you actually even see later on, in the 80s, you even see a lot of the LA County FD apparatuses and chips. You don't really put it together, but there was a lot of like fire scenes where they used a lot of the same apparatus from LA County in chips as well.
And if you notice, it's usually Squad 51 and Engine 51.
Right.
But now I got a funny little story to tell you.
Okay.
In the episode where they got the Ward LaFrance, the later Engine 51.
Right, not the open cab.
Correct. that was a Crown Fire coach.
Yeah, that would have been some wet firefighters. I'm just telling you, some wet, cold firefighters.
Oh, don't you know it? The first engine my dad ever rode was open cab, and I can remember him uh, you know, getting just drenched, you know. And you ask him, said, "You get a lot of nozzle time there, Pop?" And hell no, it's pouring down rain.
But yeah, that was a little side note. But back to your story there.
Hmm. But my dad was laying on the couch, and I was laying on the floor in front of the couch, and cause in my 4-year-old mind, when emergency come on, I had to be with Pop. Okay, and we'd seen the episodes with the Crown Fire Coach, and it was a cool truck. I mean, I ain't gonna lie about it. But Gage comes out of the bunk room, and looks and sees that new American LaFrance sitting there. And when they panned the camera over to that engine, I'll never forget what my dad said. He said, "Son of a bitch, that thing's huge." Because back then, the engines, the fire engines wasn't that big.
Right.
And he seen that, and he's a son of a bitch, that thing's huge.
So,
But
oh, go ahead.
I mean, I mean, you knew my pop. I mean, you could probably hear him saying that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But the only real fake thing about the show that I can think of was Rampart Hospital.
Yeah. Harbor Harbor General then is what, Harbor UCLA now.
Yeah, it was not on a soundstage. They did actually film in a real hospital, but it just wasn't called Rampart. The name was different. They changed the name for the show.
Yeah. But as far as someone um to be the ER director, the guy they got, God, what's his name? Uh, Kelly Brackett.
Bracket, yeah.
What was his real name?
I don't remember because he used to be on a lot of westerns.
Mm-hmm. I'll probably think of what his name is 4 o'clock in the morning. But to me, they couldn't have picked a better guy to play that part. And the funny thing of it was, when they offered him the part, there was a part coming up in a western series that he wanted more than Emergency, and he was kind of holding out for the western, and then Jack Webb, waved his magic wand or whatever he did, and got him. But to me, you couldn't have picked a better person for that part. Robert Fuller.
Fuller,
That
yeah,
was
that's
his
it.
name. Robert Fuller.
Robert Fuller, FACS.
Yeah.
And then
And
Julie London, who played Dixie, and then Joe Early, they were actually married in real life.
yeah, but did you know that at the beginning of the Emergency, Julie London was actually married to Jack Webb?
Did not know that.
Yes, sir. Sure did.
So,
Sure. And they got it. They were divorced, I think, right at the beginning of the first season, and then her and Dr. Early got hooked up.
and the rest, as
So,
they say, is history.
yep. Julie London was a singer too.
I do.
And she's pretty darn good too. I found some clips on YouTube.
Oh, okay. So,
So,
did you have anything else to say about Emergency before we move on?
brother, there's a lot of things I could say about Emergency, about how much I love that show.
Me too.
That is a solid, 5+ Halligans.
Right, right. Well, coming up next is our tip of the show or firefighter tip of the week, however you want to call it, um, segment where we will actually give a tip on firefighting or EMS topics, depending on what it happens to be that week. Now it's time for the tip of the show segment, where we leave you with a helpful tip from our experience to help you be safe and come home. Today's tip:
fellas and fellettes, it's been drilled into my head since day one when I walked on the apparatus floor that it is a veteran's firefighter's job to teach the probationary firefighter how to become a veteran firefighter. Meaning, veteran firefighters, show your probies the truck checks, how to do them correctly. Show them your safety protocols, drill them into their head. Show them the proper way of donning their turnout gear, pulling the hose, working the nozzle, raising a ladder, everything. Show them the proper procedures to do it. Probies, listen to your senior men or women in your company. They didn't become vet firefighters just by sitting at the table in the kitchen. They have a wealth of knowledge to leave you, and all you've got to do is soak it in. Now, granted, no matter how much training you get, you're never going to be a fully trained firefighter because everything changes. But that's okay. Go to school, learn your craft, master your craft. And then when your veteran firefighters have retired out and they're sitting on their front porches thinking of all the cool grabs they made when they were riding the truck company, or all the hot fires that they put out when they were on the engine company, you'll be in their position at the firehouse, and you'll have a whole new generation of firefighters to train and take under your wing. Not only will you be sharing the knowledge of your predecessors, but you'll be sharing your own knowledge, your own experience, which will even expand that generation's book of knowledge even more. And who knows, maybe one day there'll be no more interior firefighters, and everybody will be able to go home safely. But until then, take my words, heed them, listen to your veteran firefighters like your life depended on it, because at the end of the day, it does.
Our final thoughts on this episode. My final thoughts are people should take these shows for what they really are: entertainment. Those of us in the industry should not get overly bent out of shape because of inaccuracies. Jay, what are your closing thoughts?
I agree 100% with what you just said. And just one other thing, we all know we've got the hurricane coming up the coast. It's hitting Florida right now. I want to shout out to all our brothers and sisters that's in the line of this storm. You guys stay safe, keep your heads on a swivel, and make sure you go home to your loved ones.
Don't forget to tune into our next episode, where we will discuss how the fire and EMS services have come full circle. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform. We are listed on all the major services. We'll see you next time.
10-7, dude.
2 in.
2 out.
You've been listening to Hose Jockeys Unite. We hope you've enjoyed this episode, and please tell your friends about us. And always remember, even truckies need love too.